Good afternoon. I'm Jordan Roth, and welcome to the DALLÄSTHETIC podcast. This is episode 29, and we are here with Cheryl Finfrock, who has a show coming up this weekend at Road to Art in the Cedars. And incidentally, behind us is the show for Carol Swinson Roberts, which is in the large gallery at Road to Art in the Cedars, also opening this weekend. Well, welcome, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm excited to be here.
You bet. How was the drive coming in from Austin?
It was actually pretty easy. I got out at 9 a.m., a miracle.
A miracle, yeah. So, and just in time to do the podcast. So, your show is called One Supper, Three Stories.
That's right.
Tell me about the title.
Well, One Supper, Three Stories is 3 points of view. And a lot of times I like to grab a title of a show from a piece. And One Supper, Three Stories is one of the pieces. And it's broken into 3 parts. So I use content a lot of times from my own photography, sometimes from characters I see on film, etc. And I kind of collage them together in terms of a character study. So it's almost like a real theater study from, my point of view, which it's making all these characters develop and happen and pushing them together and reordering their experience, and it creates a narrative.
That's really interesting. Last week, I spoke to Carol Swinson Roberts about her exhibition, and her work is also narrative and character driven. And in a lot of cases, she's focusing quite a bit on interiors, and she'll place things in rooms that she believes her characters would have had in the rooms.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's a pretty cool thing.
That's very cool.
And she thinks of it as almost like writing a story. But I noticed kind of in that conversation, it's kind of like directing a play, and so is yours.
Yeah, it's got that on my part, this emphasis on character development and kind of going into the particular figures and finding out more about them and feeling them. I like to actually grab photos by doing a little screenshot, stopping a film on my iPad, which, by the way, doesn't work anymore. I think everybody got hip to that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll still stop it and take a photograph with my phone and find kind of literally that moment between an action that you don't see when you're watching. It's that quiet moment, kind of the moment before the pause. And that's what intrigues me, that really awkward moment that characters have. And then I explore that and I flip it a lot of times.
Yeah.
And invert it.
Well, speaking of like the characters and these scenes, we've got a slideshow that I think we'll start now of some of your previous work, because we want to talk about maybe setting the scene of a couple of these.
Okay, sounds great.
So let's see if we can get that going. So we've got, this is from your previous exhibition.
Yes, I remember that.
We'll get into a couple of these that have multiple characters, and that's where I usually wonder what's going on here. Like the little boy here. Is that a little man, or is it a little boy with his dad?
It's a mix. It's got the alter ego piece into it, but it's also potentially the child and this giving away of the basket, and the woman's not receiving it, or is she?
And then you had the woman
witness,
off to the side.
The witness with
the
sunglasses.
Yeah.
And this one is relationship oriented with 2.
Now, are they wearing Devo hats?
They are just wearing kind of skull caps. They're actually in front of a gasoline station.
Oh, okay. I'd like to think of them as Devo hats, but
it could go that way.
And then a woman on a train.
This is in New York. That's from a photograph I took. So one of those quiet photographs nobody knows about, and she was the only one without an iPhone or smartphone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This one I've always thought of as Adina and Patsy from AbFab. If
Oh,
you've
I
ever
love
seen that.
them. I totally love them.
I feel like that's them.
It's actually the Vallejo neighborhood. I lived in Vallejo for a while, and a friend of mine, it's her photo, and I took the characters out of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so very more personal that way.
And this one, I don't remember the title of this, but it had something to do with the music, right?
Yeah. And I've forgotten the title on that. But this one is my great-grandfather. So
Oh, wow.
I pulled that off at Ancestry.com. Or
Very
maybe a
cool.
great, actually.
So that's-
Samuel McFarland McLemore. So that's on my mother's side of the
And that
family.
one's very, it's kind of really abstracted.
It's one of the first. It may
Yeah.
be the first of the figures.
So cool.
Thank you.
They look like they have a lot on their minds.
They do. There's that separation thing going on.
And then this one I love because what is that on the right?
That's the invisible kind of witness person peering around. So that's the fear person, the secret person.
So it's interesting. You've got witnesses and third persons and alter egos,
Yeah.
and things like that in a lot of the work. How does psychology play into these pieces?
Well, previous body of work, like before 2011, I was working with a lot of archetypes. I mean, it was a whole different body of work, but the painting had a lot of that. So I'm incorporating archetypes in the psychology piece and continue to bring that into my work. And yeah, because really it's all a stage of symbols.
Yeah. I've always loved narrative work. I like to try to deconstruct them and kind of come
Sure.
up with my own storylines. And yours are full of interesting scenarios and possibilities. Do these characters recur in any of the paintings?
Yeah, actually, in the show on Saturday, I can show you a couple that
Yeah.
literally
Or
happen again.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
Definitely.
we'll have some
and I've
images.
been playing
yeah.
around with that a bit to kind of keep their story going a
Yeah.
bit, explore them deeper. And one of the things that I find when I'm in conversation with people about my work, when we do have that open-ended story, I've got my take, but it's really all about everyone's.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lead in, and then it's kind of whatever is extrapolated from there.
Yeah, like a conversation starter. I like that the characters are developing though, because
Good.
you spend enough time with one of the paintings and you're wondering, so often what's going on with this guy, or
Right.
what's he thinking about, and what's going to happen next.
I
And,
like it too.
yeah.
It's a deeper development, and I'm pretty excited about that. So I've been kind of, that idea has been in my head a lot, and I've started to work with that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. I'm psyched to do that.
And in this new show, you've got several works that are done on scratchboard. What exactly is scratchboard?
Scratchboard, in this case, is put out by Ampersand Art, which is local to me. It's over in Buda, Texas. All my services are by Ampersand, and they're breathable and all this different environmental advantage that I'm excited about. But scratchboard is a treatment on top of clayboard, so it's a black on top of clayboard, and you're scratching into it.
Yeah.
With a bunch of different tools.
And we've got
yeah.
some images of that while we're talking about it. Yeah. And then, so this is a mixed media. I guess it's painting and scratchboard.
Well,
or no?
actually, it's painting and drawing.
Oh,
So
painting
I've
and
got a
drawing. Okay.
So I've got several painting drawings. I have several paintings and several scratchboards in the show.
Gotcha.
So I'm kind of trotting in line and working
Yeah.
with that throughout.
Yeah, I wondered how that would be a painting and a scratchboard at once. It's not.
It would be hard.
Yeah. But the scratchboards will come up momentarily. So it mimics almost a printmaking process, I would
Yeah.
think. The more I look at it.
It has that feeling. It has kind of an etched feeling.
Yeah, here they are. And if you were to do that in a print, you'd probably have to, it maybe be an aqua tint or something like that.
Right. I think that
And-
would make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely an etched feeling to it. And you're really, how hard is it to work with?
It's well, it's pretty unforgiving in terms of like when you start messing it up, but there's some inks that you can kind of bring in to continue blacking it out. So I'm actually doing some painting in there as well.
Great.
But it does call for some pre-planning. You need a contour drawing, at least I do. Maybe somebody else doesn't, but there's got to be a little bit of plan. And it is difficult. It's like you're going through the darkness. You're really training yourself to see darkness and to find the light, and moving that darkness out of the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so your impetus for kind of going in that direction, what would that be?
Well, I love line,
Yeah.
and it brings in the drawing element, and I just kind of am in love with the process of getting after this surface and like revamping it and kind of dusting it and dirtying it and going back and forth with the light and darkness. I think it's a really good discipline also to work in black and white. Because I'm such a color addict, I thought I'd take that path and see how it felt. I did some scratch boards years ago that were much smaller, and I used inks and paint and so forth, and they were in a different body of work. But with this, I kind of said, no, I'm just going to keep them in their black and white element and work with that tone. It's kind of musical in my mind, the process.
Interesting.
I actually tap on it. I kind of do tapping on it, and that's part of it.
Wow.
Just to feel it. I mean, it's
Wow.
really physical.
Well, I'm sure that, as you're working with it, it has a different kind of tap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so nice to run a pencil over, clay board, it really is a board, and just that sound and that feeling of the pencil over the board.
Yeah.
And then the scratching out, because a lot of times it's really obnoxious because it's like the chalk finger on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I put on a headset and try to cope. And so I'm playing around with the repulsion of that feeling a little bit at the same time.
That's wild.
It is. And plus sometimes it's really dusty, and I've got to throw on a little mask here and there so it doesn't get just to be too much.
But it's all worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know it.
So what is this piece about?
Oh, actually, this piece is a woman walked into West Austin Studio Tour, where I was showing at the Neil Cochran Museum in Austin, which is coming back up in May. And I said, hey, can I take your picture? I promised not to Facebook it, And I used it as, sometimes when people come to the studio, I throw them into model mode.
Wow.
Or like, can I just walk around? Don't worry about me. I'm going to take some pictures. It'll be, if you're up for it, it'll be you as influence to me. It'll trot out into probably a whole different thing.
Very cool.
So, and people are pretty patient with me, which is nice.
So she's not on Facebook. Well,
I don't post her
Yeah.
picture on Facebook. I don't take people's photos
Right,
and
yeah.
throw them up there, privacy and permission.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So the content of my work, when I've got photographs, I'm not throwing them out there in public.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
one thing, they're not good photographs necessarily. They're
just
content
reference.
oriented. Yeah, exactly, for reference.
So, in terms of like takeaways, or not even really a takeaway, what would you like people to come to the show expecting to see or thinking about?
Wow. Well, I'm hoping that they'll come to the show and want to look at a storyline, not only from kind of a more literary perspective, maybe a little bit of interest in that, but also because I'm working with line a lot with the scratch boards and the drawing piece with the paintings and then the paintings, and there's a process that I hope is kind of a good reference point of the three ways of working with a figure.
Well, and
or the characters.
Yeah, your painting is so different from the scratch boards. I mean, it's saturated, but also it has kind of like almost like a an outsider type appeal to it.
Definitely.
You know, you're rendering a scene, and the characters are just kind of like more or less there. You do give
Yeah.
them emotion though.
Yeah.
And then the scratch boards, you're really diving in, and
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. And with less detail. I mean, more line, but you know, less color and things like that. But you really get what's going on.
It's the weirdest thing. It's
Yeah.
really interesting to kind of work with both.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back and forth because the painting does feel a lot looser to me, and I love that.
Yeah.
And it's such a relief sometimes after doing some scratch work. It's like, oh, painting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has a different feeling. And this has a little writing. If people, I hope
yeah.
that people come to the show and try to read it. That's
Nice.
it.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So, oh wow, yeah, they're really intense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
So we're pretty much going to wrap up for
Okay.
today, but thanks for joining us. I hope
Thank
everyone
you.
will join us at the opening on Saturday night. It's from 7 to 10 at Row 2 Art in the Cedars, 1501 South Irvay. And we look forward to seeing you. And thanks, everyone. Bye.